council election or a local House of Representatives election. You'll get to see what the schedule's like for the candidate, the kind of questions that they encounter, and learn more about what's involved. And that'll help you not only be a better citizen at the end, but really make a good decision whether or not you want to run for office.
How did you learn to handle the press?
I still don't know how to handle the press. You know, you don't have to answer a question if you're not prepared to answer it, and you don't have to answer a question if you don't want to answer it. But I always try to answer questions, and I think part of it's from being a teacher. My background was in teaching, and the other part is being a mother. You answer questions. And then Minnesota Nice is if somebody asks you something, you try to accommodate them. So I haven't learned how to do that, because the press will sometimes ask a question 2 or 3 different ways in order to see if you're consistent with your answer, to see if there's something in there in your answer that they can either learn more from, like the conversation we're having, or if they can take it to set up a got you type of question. So some people love the press. There's people up here who look for opportunities to do press all the time. I would personally try to avoid it.
How do you balance the differing views among your constituents on an issue?
That's an excellent question. And I come from neighborhood organizing. And so I try to look at what is it about the decision that I'm going to make that will benefit the most people, knowing that in every decision you make, that there can be winners and losers. And that's really, really difficult. So you have to, for me, be comfortable for the criticism. That's why I mentioned criticism early on. Comfortable for the criticism that'll come forward when you don't agree with someone. There are all kinds of issues, and I could talk about the real controversial ones: guns, abortion, you know, all the. But the most controversial decision I got involved in early on was putting an alley improvement in. And all politics is local, and some people, and I won't mention the street, but some people wanted an alley put in. Other people signed the petition to put the alley in because they didn't want to say no to their neighbor, but then picked up the phone and said, I really didn't want to sign it, but I had to. So then I had to figure out a way to kind of get some consensus in having the neighbors sit down and talk about it, and then making a decision, knowing that there'd be some people who wouldn't be happy with the decision.
How important is it then for you to hear from your constituents, such as occupational therapists, about issues that are of concern to them?
You know, it's really important. And when I was on the city council, you know, people would run into me in the grocery store, and or pick up the phone, or see me at a PTA meeting or a swim meet or a hockey game, and kind of talk to me about what was going on. It was very, very accessible. When I was in the State House, we'd be working on major pieces of legislation, and I think the biggest piece of legislation I ever heard on was the Twin Stadium, because people felt very comfortable discussing that. And that's where something like healthcare, hearing from healthcare professionals, because they are comfortable about discussing what is going on in the healthcare system. It is so important to have people that you can reach out to, pick up the phone, and talk to about how is this policy decision going to affect the way that you deliver healthcare. It's very important. And I would really encourage people to do that. You can call. You can write. Right now, it's best to fax to Washington, D.C. or email rather than put things in the mail, because they still decontaminate all of our mail. But I read each and every one of my letters. If I get a form letter, a couple hundred of them, people are going to get a form answer back, but I still sign each letter. And I look to see who's writing me. Are it seniors? Is it children? Is it people from one part of the district? It's very, very helpful. And people who write individualized letters, or even write a note on the bottom of a form letter, gives me an insight about what's going on in their life, what's happening back in the community, and I try to use those opportunities to become a better legislator and a better person in making policy that affects everybody every day of their life.
Could you be as effective if people did not participate and inform you of their views?
I don't think I would be as effective. That gets back to, the way that I chose to go into office was, community support. Yes, I do have big donations, but I'm still reaching out lots of small donations from a lot of people. And, there are people who serve in Congress that are self-financed. Well, then they're making the decisions at times kind of based in it like, well, this is my opinion on it. When you come from a campaign of consensus and neighborhoods and people working themselves into helping you get elected so that they have a stake of the office, I think they're more apt to communicate with you, and they're more apt to share what's important in their lives and their children's life. And an occupational therapist, when they come and talk to me, we not only would talk about health care, we'll talk about what's going on with that education. Do you think your children will have the same access to higher educational opportunities that you had in order to select your occupation and move forward? So those conversations become important in so many different ways that not to have the benefit of having people interact with you, you're just missing out on life.
Do you develop relationships with some of your constituents who you can call on for information about a particular issue?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'll use healthcare for an example. Whether it's doctors, occupational therapists, the anesthesiologists, you have the doctors and the nurses. I mean, you have all those intricacies. And every organization knows that I talk to the other organization. So one, they know they have to be actual and factual when they're speaking to me, because I'll call up so-and-so and ask them what they think about this healthcare decision. And sometimes a policy that's being here in Washington, either we have the exact opposite policy at the state of Minnesota when it comes to healthcare, or we will have made a determination that we want to be more forward-thinking, more progressive on healthcare issues. So if I'm looking at a policy here, we call back home and say, hey, how's this going to affect things? And sometimes issues will come up that you might not even be aware of unless our office reaches out.
What are the best ways that you could recommend for occupational therapists to become involved?
Well, many of you are already involved in your communities and you're probably not even realizing it. Whether it's Little League coaching, whether it's volunteering at your church, we're active in our communities. One of the things sometimes we don't do is kind of talk about how decisions that are made in Washington or in Minnesota State House, how they affect you in your everyday life. So one of the ways to become politically active without even realizing it is, for example, if an occupational therapist expresses an opinion on a health care bill, your next door neighbors are going to listen to what you have to say because you work in the health care industry and they know you know what you're talking about. That's one way to become politically involved. Working on a campaign, being involved in your PAC, reading the newspaper, listening to what's going on the radio, and if you have a question on something, doing the extra homework. If you want to express opinion, contacting the appropriate legislator to let them know what's going on. If everybody took advantage of the democracy we lived in, I think we would see less partisanship. I really believe that, because the more people become involved, the more that the expectation will be that both sides work together to compromise, and then our country and our political system will be much stronger.
Thank you, Congresswoman McCollum.
You're welcome.